Welcome to On My Way to Wealth, the podcast where busy Gen Xers can learn financial tips as they navigate life on their way to wealth. And now, please join your host, Luis Rosa.
This episode is brought to you by Latin Excellence. Visit latinexcellence.com. That's LatinXCellence.com or latinxmovement.com to learn more and shop our merchandise. You are excellence. Hello and welcome to another episode of On My Way to Wealth. My name is Luis and I'm your host. Today I want to talk about medical debt and how it impacts your credit score and some new changes that came out as part of a new law that's going to be helpful for people because it's going to help boost credit scores. So currently, according to the CFPB, this is the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, Americans are struggling with about $88 billion in medical debt. It's a huge number. And a lot of that debt, unfortunately, ends up being reported to the credit bureaus as medical collection debt because, unfortunately, lots of people are not in a position where they can pay their medical bills on time or all at once. So they end up getting reported to collections, and eventually it makes its way to a credit report, which then has a negative effect because if you go to apply, say, for like a mortgage or a car loan or anything like that, and the medical debt comes up, it usually has a negative impact on your score, which will then either prevent you from getting the financing you're looking to obtain, or if you could still get the financing, it might be not such good terms because a lot of the lenders will basically look at that as a negative, and maybe they'll offer you financing, but it's not going to be the terms that you want. It might be a higher rate than you normally would have qualified for. So that's one way it impacts you negatively. The other way is that some people, because of their high medical debt, they forego paying something else as a result in order to continue to make their medical debt payment. So there are people that would stop paying either their rent or their mortgage or a car payment, or maybe pay it late as a result of some medical debt, which in turn indirectly again ends up having a negative impact on your credit score. So let me highlight some of the changes that started actually as of July 1st, 2022. The first one is if you have a paid medical collection, it's no longer going to appear on your credit score, on your credit report, right? So that is going to be a major boost to a lot of individuals who went through a process of collection and paid their debt, but the debt was still remaining on their credit report history. That's just going to automatically disappear as of July 1st, 2022. And that is going to give a lot of people a boost in their credit score. So if you fall in that category where perhaps because it's a medical debt, you weren't able to get the best financing you were looking for, and you haven't checked your credit score since July 1st, highly recommend that you do so to make sure that, number one, it's gone, and number two, to see what kind of positive impact it had on your score and see if you could revisit what you were trying to accomplish before. So I'm going to provide some resources in the show notes, but one of them is annualcreditreport.com. As of now, you can still get a free copy of your credit report weekly, actually, until the end of 2022. Now, annualcreditreport.com, you're able to get the report, not the score, but you can get the report so that at least you see the information that is on your credit report and you have the option of disputing it. If you want to purchase your score, then you can go ahead and do so. But at least this is a great first step because it's free and you can see if the information that's on there is accurate. And if it isn't, it gives you the opportunity to go ahead and dispute it. So the first highlight is paid medical collections will no longer appear on your credit report. So that is huge. That's going to give a lot of people a nice boost on their credit scores. Number two, the time that it takes for unpaid medical collections is going up to 1 year instead of 6 months, the time that it takes to be reported. So under the previous law, if a medical collection was 180 days or more, the collection agency can go ahead and put that on your credit report. Now that's going to take a year. So it gives people a lot more time to probably pay their debt off or maybe negotiate or something like that so that it doesn't end up coming up as a collection. So that is really important too, because that's going to help decrease the amount of time that people spend trying to just figure out how to get these things off the credit report, and it's going to help you, again, avoid having something going into your credit report because it's buying more time, right? So I'm going to talk about at the end some of the ways that you should plan for, things you can do to avoid it to get to that point. But that's another piece of great news right there. And number three, this is going to start in 2023 in the first half, is if there's any medical collection that is $500 or basically under $500, then it's not going to make it onto your credit report in the first place. And you'd be surprised how many people, perhaps, missed a copay or something, and maybe they moved. I don't know. Somehow it ended up being a collection, and it was just a small little $40 charge or something that could have had a significant negative impact on the credit report just because it went unpaid. That happens a lot. Some people never got the notification from the doctor's office. So this is another great update to the law, because now anything under $500 starting in 2023 is no longer going to get reported, even if it does go into collection. So you're still responsible for it, but at least it's not going to negatively impact your credit, because that can have a negative ripple down into other things that you're trying to do later, like buying a home. So let's talk about how it works. Right now, medical collection, initially, you go to your doctor's office, right? Either it's a visit or you had a procedure done. Let's say you have insurance, right? Assuming you have insurance, your medical provider is going to turn around and send an invoice to your insurance company. Now, the insurance company is going to then, based on your plan and all of the particulars in your plan, like how much your copay should be, your out of pocket, whether the procedure was approved, if the provider is in network versus out of network. I go into more detail as to how to understand your health insurance in episode 66. So if you haven't listened to it, this is a great way for you to learn more about how to understand your health insurance policy. Like, how do these things work in terms of your copays and your annual limits and so on. So if you haven't listened to it, tune into episode 66, understanding your health insurance policy. But ultimately, your insurance company gets this bill, and then they go ahead and pay whatever they're supposed to pay based on the terms of your policy. Now, the difference then falls on you as the patient, your responsibility. So then the medical provider turns around and says to you, hey, your bill was, let's say $5,000. Your insurance company paid $4,000. So your balance is $1,000, right? And then at that point, it's up to you to make sure that you get that bill paid. Now, a lot of the times there are errors in bills, so it's very important that you read the explanation of benefits from your insurance. Typically, aside from the bill from the medical provider, you would also get an EOB, or an explanation of benefits, from your insurance company. Very important that you read this, because there's a study that was done that said about 80% of medical bills have errors on it. So you want to make sure that you understand the explanation of benefits from your insurance company to make sure that they're paying what they're supposed to be paying. And then number two, you look at the invoice from your doctor to make sure that the payment is reflected on there and that there are no errors, right? So that you're not paying something you're not supposed to. After that, if you don't pay, then the medical provider, after several attempts, usually you would see an invoice that says 0 to 30 days, and then they have the little box that moves to the right, 60 to 90, 90 to whatever. Usually about 180 days later, if they haven't collected from you, they will go ahead and sell that debt, refer it to a medical collection agency. Now the debt is going to be pursued by these collection agencies. Usually they have a little bit more aggressive tactics. They might resort in calling you and just not being so nice about it. Eventually, if you don't pay them, they usually would then report it to the credit bureaus. Not necessarily all of them, but at least one of the credit bureaus. And then you end up with a negative ding on your credit report, which can then have a negative impact if you're trying to get a mortgage or refinance your home, your automobiles, anything that requires your credit score. So that can negatively impact you. Now the law is changing so that starting in the second half of 2023, July 1st, 2022, paid medical debt will no longer show up. And also, you now have a year before it gets to collection. So it buys you time, So I wanted to talk to you about what to do, either to avoid it getting to that point or what to do if you've already gotten to that point where it's in collections. So before you even get to the collections point, just realize that a lot of medical providers would rather get something than nothing, right? So if they already got a chunk of money from the insurance company and there's a balance from you, it does not necessarily mean that you don't have any options. You might be able to call them and say, hey, listen, I can't afford this. What can we do? Sometimes they will just allow you to pay cents on the dollar, and they might just say, listen, just pay us this much and we'll call it even, right? They might allow you to do a payment plan, and that could be with as little as like $25 a month. Some of them would not even charge you interest. So just realize that just because you have an invoice, it doesn't mean that it's accurate, and also doesn't mean that you don't have any options to negotiate. As the patient, you can call the medical provider and say, hey, what can we do here, right? Either, hey, this is not right. If there is an error, if it is correct, you can still say, what can we do? What can we work out, right? So I would say that's usually your first line of defense, because a lot of times you might get the amount reduced, or you might get, in essence, a 0% charge on it and maybe spread it out over a certain amount of months so that you could afford to pay it back, right? And avoid for it to go on collections, which is very important so that it doesn't hurt you negatively down the line. Now, another thing you should do is check your credit score, your credit report. Go to annualcreditreport.com and make sure that you get all three, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, so that you can review them for accuracy, so that if there is something wrong, you can call the provider or the collection agency and ask that it be removed. And if they don't do it, then you can dispute it directly with the credit bureaus, because a lot of the times it might just be an error or something that you've already taken care of that shouldn't be reflected, especially now the new law, like everything that's already been paid shouldn't be on your credit report in the first place. Now, what are some options if you already do owe money and you are not able to negotiate any lower amounts and you just want to be done with it so that it doesn't get to the point where it goes to collection? Well, other things you can consider, it's either consolidating your debt, and that could be using a personal loan. It could be using a home equity line of credit, could be using a 401k. This is where very important that you speak to a financial advisor so that you can see what your options are and make sure that you do what is best for you in your situation, right? Because there's plenty of ways to get into it, and you just want to make sure that you're doing the one that's the best possible outcome for you. All right. So speaking to a financial advisor would be very helpful in that regard. And also, if you're planning ahead, this also gives you a leg up. Let's say that you need a procedure and you haven't done it yet, right? One of the things that you should do is read your policy. And again, I reference you back to my episode 66, Understanding Your Health Insurance, because you should know exactly how your policy works. There's usually an amount of money that the insurance company is going to cover. It depends on whether the provider is in network or out of network. There's usually a deductible that you're responsible for. There's usually a maximum out of pocket that you're responsible for. And these might be things that really would have a say into your decision as to even when to get a procedure. Because, for example, if you're approaching the end of the year and you've already met your out of pocket maximum, and you're going to be using an in-network provider, that means that the company, the insurance company, is going to pay 100% of the cost, right, of that procedure. So it might not make sense to wait till the next year, because then the clock resets and now you start a brand new maximum out of pocket for the new calendar year, right? So these are kind of things that you can look at in advance and determine what the cost may be for you out of pocket. Also, you might be able to get more close of an estimate from providers. Let's say you need a procedure, you can get all the providers' names, see if they're in network, out of network. They can also give you at least an idea as to what it may cost. So you want to make an informed decision so that you're not just blindly doing something that eventually might negatively impact you, because you might be able to plan it out, whereas minimizing the out-of-pocket expense, or even having zero out-of-pocket expense if you already met your maximum out of pocket for that year, right? So these are the kinds of things you want to take into account so that you can take advantage of. So again, just recapping the highlights as of July 1st, 2022, if you have paid medical collection that date information on your credit reports, it will no longer be there. So it has to come off. It's going to give you a boost in your credit scores. Number two, the time that it's going to take to go into collections is going up from 6 months to a year. And again, that buys you more time to negotiate or to pay it off before it even gets to the point where it's in collection. And number three, any medical collection under $500 will no longer be reported as of 2023 in your credit report. So these are three major changes that are going to give people the ability to either not have medical debt on their credit report or have it removed, which is a great boost to your score. So I hope you find this information useful. I'm going to put the link to annualcreditreport.com in the show notes, so make sure to check that out. And as always, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Luis at onmywaytowealth.com. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to On My Way to Wealth. If you have any questions, please send me an email at luis at onmywaytowealth.com. The information provided here is for information and education purposes only. The opinions expressed herein are solely those of myself, unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by my firm or myself about other parties' information or accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with a financial advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation. Thank you.